sovereignty starts with your health. You don't want to be tied to a dialysis center. You build some strength, build the discipline, build the habit. Just seeing how my purchasing power had decreased so much with my fiat and how my purchasing power had increased so much with my Bitcoin, that's when I really start to understand this. Fitness is a gateway drug to self-improvement. You don't grow in the gym, you grow whenever you get your nutrition in, when you get your sleep. Celebrate the process and you'll get the outcome, you'll get the goal, but focus on the process. I look at bodies like a work of art, right? Your appearance and your physique, it says a lot about who you are as a person. You make time for what you prioritize, right? Because people got plenty of time to sit on their phone and scroll social media, right? So if fitness is important to you, if your health is important to you, then you'll make time for it.
Today on The Signal, I'm joined by Dr. JAE, a pharmacist, trainer, and founder of Proof of Work Fitness. After quitting alcohol and rebuilding his life through health and discipline, he's helping Bitcoiners apply the same principles of proof of work, low time preference, and sovereignty to their bodies as they do to their money. JAE, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's really good to be here. I've watched a couple of your podcasts and it's just nice to be on the other end of that. So it's really cool to be here.
Yeah, it's really cool to meet you in person. I've been following your stuff on Instagram. You're putting out some incredible content, and I can't wait for Bitcoiners to find your stuff and for you to share your story and share all your knowledge with other Bitcoiners and with other people on similar journeys. But
Likewise.
Yeah, appreciate that. Before we dive into your fitness background, I really want to hear more about your Bitcoin story. So how did you first discover Bitcoin, and what about it seemed to click really well for you?
When I first heard about Bitcoin, it was like late 2017, and there was like 17,000 going towards the 20,000. And I was doing all I could to get my money on the Coinbase. And I remember I was having trouble with my credit union, and they was like, "Oh, is this fraud or is this?" There was like giving me a lot of static.
Yeah.
I had to call a couple of times. What's going on with this transfer? It was taking so long. And anyway, by the time that I actually got my money in there and I was ready to invest in the Bitcoin, it had already fell a lot because I remember it was like 20,000. I was like, oh man, it's going to be 50,000 by the time I get my money in here. It's taking forever. And then so by the time that I ended up getting my money in, it was probably like 14,000 or going towards the 10. So I was like, oh, okay, maybe that was a good thing. But by that time though, like I was reading about other coins and I got a little sidetracked. So it didn't totally click for me immediately. It was a little bit later before it really clicked as far as like the sovereignty and like the money aspect and how this is really hard money and it's not like all the other like ephemeral type of coins from the meme coins and the ICOs and stuff like that was going on at the time. It's just a long story short, it didn't really click until I ended up selling some like in 2019. I ended up consolidating all my coins and put everything into Bitcoin. And then after a while, because when I put it in there, I said, I'm going to hold this for a long time. And I remember like I had $3,600 in there and I ended up selling everything. And I was thinking about it at the time, like I'm making a mistake, but it wasn't clicking for me. So I did that. And then after 2020 come around, it was coming around like $9,000, $10,000 of being really steady. And then I started paying attention to it. Like, okay, maybe this is like something, maybe there's something I missed. So I got reinvested. And just to fast forward a little bit, whenever I was doing my taxes after that year, after Bitcoin had climbed a lot, I realized that the 0.24, whatever Bitcoin, whatever I would have had, would have been like $17,000 from like the 3,000 that I put in. And at the same time, I was learning about money because I had $30,000 saved up for a house for a down payment. And meanwhile, that $30,000 from a house wasn't going to buy me the same amount of house as it would have back in 2018. And so just seeing how my purchasing power had decreased so much with my fiat and how my purchasing power had increased so much with my Bitcoin, that's when I really was like, okay, the money aspect, I really start to understand this. And then I started going to Bitcoin meetups, started meeting other Bitcoiners and started learning more than just reading on forums. So I think that was a crucial part, is like going to the meetups and just seeing firsthand for myself, like how my purchasing power had increased in Bitcoin terms.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that story. I love hearing people's stories. And yeah, the common element seems to be that you don't fully get it until you personally have some kind of experience that shows you the power of Bitcoin. And you had that experience. You personally saw how if you held your money for the down payment, how you were going to be able to buy less of a house. Whereas if you held it in Bitcoin, you're able to see how your purchasing power increases. So that's an incredible personal story. Thank you for sharing that. And I love how you're connecting what you've learned with Bitcoin with the health and the nutrition aspect. And I love how you share these personal stories, like your experience with alcohol. And you talk about how you had a fall in 2018 that was connected to alcohol, and that's what
Yeah.
made you stop drinking. So what was it that shifted inside you at that moment, and how did that change your path forward?
It's more about, I just remember being in this place to where I would I would stay consistent and I would work out. I'd do I started doing HelloFresh where I would just order
Mm,
meals and stuff like that because I didn't really know how to cook too much. But I just knew like the way I grew up eating wasn't healthy. And like we loaded everything up with just a bunch of different stuff. And so I knew that wasn't contributing to my long-term goals, but I wanted to eat healthier. And so like I'd see the HelloFresh, so I started to order some food. And so that would be okay. But then I would have a weekend or something like that where I drink, and then I fall off the wagon or whatever.
mm,
And then I'd eat bad food and then feel bad. So I'd take a couple of days before I could really get into the gym, start working out again. So I just find myself like going in this cycle like over a month or so. So I'd be clean for 3 weeks or something like that. Then I drink for a couple of days and then and just feel bad. And then I'm gain up 10 pounds, 15 pounds, something like that. And then I'd lose it again over the next couple of weeks. And I just, oh man, like when I got hurt, I was like, okay, what's the best thing I can do for my recovery? And that's
mm,
so I got kind of reinitiated with nutrition and started wanting to make sure I'm hitting my protein goals. So I had a protein goal every day. I was started making sure I'm hitting my protein shakes, doing my walking, and through that, I just got okay. Let me just focus on the basics. Let me make sure I'm getting my sleep in. Let me make sure I'm getting in, hit my protein target. Let me make sure I'm getting my walk in and I'm doing some exercise. And through that, like I started to feel so much better and not going through the cycle of, oh, I'm going to drink and then I'm going to eat this bad food and make questionable decisions whenever I'm like drinking or whatever and that goes to with, with like relationships and or like hanging out with people maybe that don't serve me or
mm,
don't serve me to be around these type of people or maybe we're only around each other just because we're both drinking. And let me get after. I wanted to get around people that have similar goals. So I was studying Bitcoin, like I was getting into Bitcoin, I was getting into trading, and none of my friends like they weren't into any of that kind of
mm,
stuff. And I wanted to be around more people that had like business mindset and stuff like that.
mm.
And those people weren't drinking on the weekends and doing stuff like that. Like they were studying business, they were listening to podcasts. I ended up moving to Florida in 2019, so I got around a lot of people that were on my vibe, on my kind of level in that aspect. There's a lot of people that are hustlers here, and yeah, maybe I lost my train there, but the drinking wasn't serving me, and I just had to get back to basics, right? Back to the fundamentals of making sure I'm getting my sleep in, making sure I'm doing my exercise, and just building from there.
Yeah, that's such a powerful story. Thank you for sharing that. I love how you talk about it because I think a lot of people resonate with your story because alcohol is just so normalized in our society and we don't question it. We just think that's what you do on the weekends. But I love how you talk about that mindset shift and how if you really logically evaluate alcohol's role in your life, it really doesn't make a lot of sense in most people's case if you just step back and look at it. And then also what you talk about is if you drink, then you're going to have drinking friends. And a powerful principle is that you are the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. So just by having that realization, you shifted your circle of influence, which put you on a whole new path. So that's very inspirational to hear. And it's very incredible to see what you've created with your business, Proof of Work Fitness. Can you talk about why you chose that name and what does proof of work mean to you when it comes to health?
Yeah. And just to tag on to that point that you made about you're the summation of the 5 closest people next to you. And in some ways, especially now, we have so many influencers and we have so many people that we've consumed so much of their content. I really that goes into whose content are you consuming? What are they
Mm-hmm.
talking about in their
Mm-hmm.
content? And that's why I try to deliver a lot of value in my content because I know there's everyone they can't afford my services or they're not in a place where mentally where they're there yet, where they're saying, all right, I'm ready to join a program, I'm ready to really better myself but they can start consuming content that is in line with their goals. And that's what I did myself. Like I started listening to more positive things. I started listening to people that would be talking about meditation, talking about business, talking about just self-development, stuff like that. So fitness is a gateway drug to self-improvement, is the way I like to think
Mm-hmm.
about it. So once you get to a certain point in your own fitness, once you built the disciplines, then you can start saying, okay, I know I can show up for myself. I know I can get myself into bed and I can hit my macros. Like I built that base level of stuff. Let me either, and then that will give you so much confidence in your own abilities. And then so maybe you ask for a raise at your job, or maybe you ask that girl out, or maybe you go and you take this opportunity to start a business or something like that. So I think once you start there with the foundation of fitness, it can really go into other areas of life that you want to improve on. And bringing it back to my business, proof of work is the consensus mechanism of Bitcoin, right? So the piece of proof of work in Bitcoin is something that's hard to obtain. Like it takes like real world action, or it takes some type of work for like a computer in the network to get that proof of work. But it's easy and fast for others on the network to verify. So it's the same way with fitness, I believe. So if somebody looks at you and they can tell that you have an athletic physique, you have the athletic aesthetic, that is easily to verify, right? It's just like on site. And that says a lot about you, your appearance and your physique. It says a lot about who you are as a person. And it's just clicked for me. And I was actually surprised that nobody had already started like that kind of brand. So when I started looking up, what am I going to call my fitness brand? And yeah, it's like proof of work fitness. Of course, it just makes sense.
Yeah, I love that you've got this brand. It fits so perfectly with Bitcoin's principles. And not just proof of work, but other Bitcoin principles also seem to align with health very well. The concept of self custody or low time preference.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how some other Bitcoin principles also show up in fitness and lifestyle?
Yeah. You think about the concept of self custody, right? Self custody, the way I like to think about it, like in a fitness context, is are you cooking your own food? Do you know what the ingredients are in your food? Because if you go to a restaurant, yeah, you may see what's on the menu. Yeah, there's some chicken in there, there's some potatoes or whatever, but like, what oil did they use? Are they using are they using some type of like seed oil, or are they using some type of oil that's been cooked in there a bunch of different times, maybe past the smoke point? Are they cooking it too hot? Is it turning rancid? You don't know. But like when you cook things yourself, then you have more control over that. You're not ceding control over what you're putting in your body all the time. So it's good to build that, just to know what you're doing in that aspect. Same thing with your just knowing your numbers, knowing what your macros are, going through a period of time where you track your calories. And so you can see, because a lot of people, they struggle with gaining and losing the same 10 or 20 pounds. And it's really because they never really took the time to actually say, okay, because they think that they're eating enough. But if they're struggling to gain weight, then they're obviously not eating enough. But if they're struggling to lose weight, they think they're not eating that much. But if they were to actually track everything, wow, I'm getting way too much fat or way too many carbs, but I'm not even getting that much protein. But then if they'll take a time, okay, let me focus on hitting my protein goal, right? That protein is going to help them feel more satiated, so they're not as hungry, so they're not snacking on a bunch of Fiat food, a bunch of snacks and stuff like that. And then they're able to reach their goals quicker. So I think the self custody is a big one for that. It's just taking ownership of what you're doing and what you're putting in your body.
Yeah, I love how you break that down. And what about low time preference? Can you expand on that and how that applies to health and
Yeah,
fitness?
yeah, absolutely. So the low time preference, that kind of, okay, so you people invest in Bitcoin, right? They do dollar cost averaging, right? Where it's just like taking, okay, it's just $10 a day or $10 a week or whatever is like the thing for them, where it's nothing too much where they're going to feel so much anxiety if the price crashes 80%, but it's enough that they're accumulating a little bit over time. And that's why I like to start with, okay, let's start with a walk, right? Let's start with 8,000 steps a day, 10,000 steps a day. Let's do 2 workouts a week. Let's do three 30 to 45-minute workouts per week. And that's nothing crazy. It's nothing that somebody will call you a fitness freak, because people think, because there's plenty of people that work out 6 days a week and they don't have the physique that really would match with that, because they think that's what they're supposed to be doing, versus somebody like me. I'm working out 2 or 3 times a week, but I'm making sure that I have my fundamentals of the sleep, of hitting the macros, staying under on my calories. And when I do train, I'm training with a high enough intensity to stimulate muscle growth. So when you focus on those things and take a long-term mindset, you're not trying to kill yourself every time that you go into a workout. You don't have to do a 2 hour workout, but whenever you do train, you're training hard, and then you rest, say 2 to 4 days in between intense training sessions. So you give your body time to recover. but you give yourself the building blocks to adapt and to grow, because you don't grow in the gym. You grow when you get your nutrition in, when you get your sleep. And if you just take a long-term mindset saying, hey, maybe I don't have a perfect workout this week, but I showed up. I did some push-ups and I did a few lunges instead of doing nothing, when I could have said, oh, I don't have time, I'm not going to do anything. And over time, like taking a long-term mindset, low time preference, those workouts, they add up, and it ends up being where you have the physique and you have the discipline to show that proof of work.
Yeah, thank you for your explanations. Just in talking to you, it's just further reinforcing this idea of how Bitcoin principles just align so perfectly with these health principles. And that's why the business you've created is so powerful, because you're aligning these powerful Bitcoin forces with these powerful universal principles. And yeah, I'm just so excited to see where you take your business, how it grows over time. And you had this really cool video that I saw where you were training one of your clients and working out at the same time. And as you were working out with him, you told him that having a growth mindset means seeing challenges as opportunities to show how awesome you are.
Yeah.
And can you get into that a little bit and explain how you're helping your clients embody that shift?
Yeah. So I try to teach my clients to celebrate the effort, not necessarily, okay, yes, we want the outcomes, right? We want the physique, we want the confidence, we want to look, we want to feel better, but celebrate putting points on the board, right? Like when I talked about doing the short workouts. So maybe a perfect workout where you're training everything and you're hitting all the sets that you need. Maybe it's an hour and a half, right? But if you don't have an hour and a half, rather than not going at all, go in and work out for 30 minutes. Do one set of each exercise, or do half the exercises in the list. But over time, if you keep getting those in, eventually you're gonna find the time, because I've been putting all this work in. I want to actually get through this workout. So now maybe I'm not gonna watch as much of that show, or maybe I'm gonna eat a little bit faster, or I'm gonna get up a little earlier. You're gonna find the time, because you make time for what you prioritize, right? Because people got plenty of time to sit on their phone and scroll social media, right? So if fitness is important to you, if your health is important to you, if you don't want to have the same type of disease states and stuff like that most people go into, but because of their lifestyle, then you'll make time for it. And so I try to get them to celebrate the small wins and to stack those efforts. It's just make sure, hey, did we do our walks? Did we hit our steps? Did we have protein shake? Did we sleep? Celebrate the process, and you'll get the outcome. You'll get the goal, but focus on the process. Don't necessarily tie it to, did I lose 5 pounds this week? But did you hit your steps? Were you sleeping? Did you keep a gratitude journal? Were you thankful for the things that you do have? So that's just the focus on the process, basically.
Yeah, I love how you not only are you giving people this incredible advice and knowledge on how to improve their health and fitness, but you also have this big emphasis on the mindset, which is so huge. And you're also honest about the struggles that you've had too. And I think that's important for people to know, that you can't expect perfection. And you talked about how you often knew the right things to do, but you didn't apply them personally. And I think that helps make you a good coach, because you can relate to the struggles that clients have. So how do you help your clients bridge the gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it?
Yeah. So we try to build systems. Whenever I talk about systems, they're like, what do you mean on a system? It's just like, how do you think through problems, and how are you talking to yourself, right? Like whenever some things happen, whenever things don't go according to plan, are you calling yourself stupid or an idiot or are you calling yourself fat or lazy because you didn't do this or do that? Or are you saying, hey, we've had a difficult time and we're trying our hardest, we're doing our best, or maybe we didn't give it our best, but we're committed to doing better, right? Versus talking bad about yourself, talking negative about yourself. So I try to get people to reframe that self-talk, and it takes a while to happen, but once you make the commitment to just be mindful of your self-talk and catch those negative things that you say, flip around and say something positive and say, okay, how do we improve from here? And we have a way that we're going to, like when I said before about following the process, hitting the steps, hitting the sleep and stuff like that. So whenever it comes to say it gets to 8 o'clock, you have an alarm that goes off that reminds you, hey, we have this thing that's going on in the morning. We have these other goals. It's time to wrap up this show. It's time to stop scrolling, trying to get in bed. Because once you actually get to sleep, you're going to feel better. And then you're going to be a lot more clear. You're going to be have a clear head for tomorrow, so that you're not dealing with these like the stress and the hunger and stuff like that, which people will be a lot more likely to overeat or to eat bad foods if they are tired, if they are stressed. So we can make sure that you're sleeping enough, that you're hitting your steps and stuff like that, that you have the energy to do those things. And so it's more about like the system, and then that you're doing your check-ins, right? So like you're checking in with yourself. You're either writing it down or you're submitting the check-in to me, and when you're typing it in, okay, I'm really proud of what I did this week. I'm really proud of I did this, or I logged these workouts or whatever. Okay, where's some opportunity that you could have improved? What could you have done better? And you actually put that pen to paper where you actually write it out in a message, and it brings it to the forefront versus just going through life, right? We're always busy. We always got so much stuff going on. So it actually makes you think about it. It's just to slow down. And then you check in with somebody that's giving you, like an outsider view, right? So there's a stat that says people that have some type of external accountability are 65% more likely to reach a goal. But then if you have weekly check-ins, that number goes up to 95%. And that's what we do with the program is we have weekly check-ins where they're putting their weight in, they're tracking what their waist is. We have measurements for like your legs, your biceps, your chest. You don't have to do those every week, but it's there as an option. I recommend to do it every 3 months just to keep a measurement of how your growth is to make sure everything's symmetrical and really having that proof of work, fitness aspect of it. And then answering a few questions to see where your head's at, because you can go back and see, okay, where was my head at? What was I worried about 6 months ago? Because ideally, the problems that you have in a year from now shouldn't be the same problems that you're dealing with now. You should be bigger problems, should be new problems. And that's the thing. It's like because you're never going to not have problems. You're always going to have problems, but it's about we keep adapting and overcoming so that we can keep getting better.
Man, your program sounds incredible. I'm so glad to have you on and to hear you talk about your program because it sounds pretty incredible. And I love how it's just backed by the Bitcoin principles. It's such an incredible, powerful concept. And I know a lot of your clients are Bitcoiners and busy entrepreneurs who have very crazy schedules. So what's the simplest time efficient workout routine that someone can do anywhere?
That depends on kind of what they have available. But yeah, that's another thing too, is like the people that aren't necessarily Bitcoiners, they get to learn some of these principles and learn why I'm so passionate about it. And typically they're like, hey, you know what? Tell me a little bit more about this Bitcoin stuff. And let me start. I've already got a Robinhood account. I've already got a Cash App. Let me just get me a little bit of Bitcoin. Just I want to be in this thing in case it catches on. Like there might be something to this. That's a way that like, because I don't really push it on people. I just let them know, hey, listen, if you want to invest with Bitcoin, you'll save 20% off the program, but it's not, you have to. But it's just like basically like a Fiat surcharge of 20% if people don't or invest with Bitcoin. And so if people have dumbbells at home, then we give them some dumbbell workouts. If people have an actual gym that they can do, then they get those kinds of workouts where they can either do Smith machine or actual squat rack. I try to get my clients to use the free weights, so the dumbbells, the squat rack, and stuff like that. But there's some fundamental movement patterns, right? There's push, there's pull, there's hinging at the hips, and there's core work. So we want to make sure that we're hitting all the areas to make sure that we keep everything symmetrical and we make I look at bodies like a work of art, right? Like you can look at a certain part and you can put some muscle in here. We can burn some fat from there to make like a aesthetic physique, something that's symmetrical. And it's cool to see people come to the other side of that and they feel that confidence. And they're like, wow, like I feel so much better. I have more energy. Like I thought that I had so much going on before, but now I have more energy and I'm working out before work. So it's counterintuitive. But once they go through the process, they realize that 20 or 30 minutes or 30 or 45 minutes that they're working out really helps set the tone for the rest of the day.
Yeah,
so as far as like a specific workout, like you can do squats, you can do push-ups, you can do lunges, you can do Romanian deadlifts, like a single leg Romanian deadlift. If you haven't done one of those, if you just go do 10 on each leg of a single leg Romanian deadlift and actually just go full range of motion, that's a good workout. Like you'll feel it the next day in your glutes and in your hamstrings. And that's an effective way to target those areas. Same thing, like if you were to do 3 minutes worth of lunges, if you say, okay, I want to hit my legs, but I don't have enough time to go to the gym, you set a target on your phone or alarm on your phone for 5 minutes, let that go down, and you just do lunges the whole time. Boom, boom. In that 5 minutes, you're going to be burning up. You're like, whoa, that's a good workout. So I just, when people say they don't have time, it's just, you haven't tried, because if you do
Mhm.
push-ups for 2 minutes, you're gonna be toast.
Yeah, I love how you simplify this process and you demystify it because for someone who's not into health and fitness, I can see how it would be very intimidating with exercises in the gym and with food, but you break it down and on a very practical level, which is very useful. And we touched upon this a little bit in the beginning about Fiat food and protein. And I know you talk a lot about protein first nutrition and making smarter packaged food swaps. So, what are the biggest traps that you see with the Fiat food system? And what's a simple way for people to start becoming more aware of the traps and how to start breaking free from the traps?
Yeah, so I think people don't really realize the why the processed food is bad for us. Of course, they say, oh, the seed oils and stuff like that. But to me, it's really the calories, right? It's the
Mm.
people are they're going over on their calories, which is, you have the seed oils that are high in omega-6 amino acids, or high in omega-6, and which, when you have an imbalance of omega-3 and omega-6, that can put you in an inflammatory state. So that's what a lot of fiat foods are, a lot of processed foods, they're high in omega-6. So that increases your inflammation. Then, whenever you think about how most people are underslept, that increases inflammation. And then when you talk about they're going over on their calories, that's another thing for inflammation. So I think if we can make sure we're sleeping good, and we can make sure that we're eating under our calorie target, so that you're decreasing two of those things that are causing a lot of inflammation. And so you could still, what I try to get people to do is, you don't necessarily have to stop eating all the processed foods and change your whole diet around, but let's focus on protein. Make sure you're hitting your protein target and you're under on your calories. And that is going to do a lot to help you and to make sure you're sleeping good and actually getting some movement in, getting some exercise in. So I think that if you make some smarter swaps, right, where you invest in some avocado oil or some olive oil, that's going to be better. If you look at, instead of drinking regular soda, if you get some sparkling water or some 0 calorie drinks, even the stuff with the sucralose and the fake sugars or whatever, or you can do, I got agave, not agave, but I've got some here, this stevia. I got a thing of stevia. So that's like a low calorie sweetener, and it's all natural. So you can put that in your tea rather than having a bunch of sugar in your sweet tea. You can use stevia. And it's just smart swaps like that. And so whenever people are looking at things that are low calorie or high protein, a lot of times they'll say, oh, it's got protein in it. But you look at the back and it's got 2 grams of protein. So my cutoff, something I say is like a low calorie, high protein snack, would be less than 200 calories and at least 20 grams of protein. That would be a good snack. That would be a good kind of thing to eat on if you're going to just buy it from the store. You can get something that's, say, 10 grams of protein, but if you're looking at something that's 5 grams of protein, 8 grams of protein, and it's like over 200 calories, that's probably not a snack that's going to be in line with your goals, at least long term. Right? Not something that you want to be eating every day. It's one thing if you want to snack on something, but I would shy away from that. I would get something that is closer to 20 and under 200, as far as a snack from the store. But yeah, whenever you do go to the grocery store, you want to make sure that you're shopping around the outsides of the grocery store, stuff
Mhm.
where the fresh produce, the vegetables, the fruits. And when you're looking at fruits and stuff like that, all the different stuff to eat, aim for the things that are going to be high in antioxidants, like blueberries, raspberries, kiwis, stuff like that, versus maybe a bunch of watermelon or a cantaloupe or something. Those are good, don't get me wrong, but for the amount of fiber that a blueberry or a blackberry, something like that, has in it, so it has a lot of fiber, which is like a prebiotic feeds the probiotics. If people have ever heard of a probiotic, that's like the gut bacteria, where a prebiotic is the stuff like the fiber-rich food, like blueberries, and that feeds that good bacteria, and that helps with your thinking. They say that the gut is the second brain, and if you're feeding that good bacteria, we're like 20 trillion cells in the human body, and most of them don't belong to us. And so if we can help those little creatures that are living in us to help the good ones thrive, that helps with so many other things that it's not really too well understood, but they can see, hey, these people that are eating these blueberries and stuff like that, they're healthier on average. They have better energy. They have less inflammation, stuff like that. So that's what I would focus on, is making sure that you're hitting your, say, steak. I like to get ground beef, but I like to get the one that's 97% meat and 3% fat, just because you're getting in less fat. And
Mhm.
if you're eating the regular 80-20, you're going to be getting a lot of those calories from fat. It means if you're eating like a taco or something like that, you're going to be able to eat a lot less tacos for the same amount of calories. But if you get the 97 and the 3 blend, you're going to be able to get a lot more protein. And whether it's your like a taco that you're making or you're just putting it in some soup, basically what I try to do is I'll get 3 pounds of the 97 and the 3, and I'll cook that all together with some veggies or something like that. And then from that, I can make a bunch of different things. And I'll do the same thing with the ground turkey. So I do ground beef, ground turkey. They have ground chicken. I don't really like the ground chicken. I usually do chicken thighs. But basically, it's like you get your protein, you get your veggies, you get your fruits, and then if you need some stuff on the inside, like on the inside of the grocery store, maybe you're getting some granola, maybe you're getting some protein cereal, some spices. But really, there's not a lot that you should be leaning towards regularly that you're getting on the inside, because that's where all the processed foods are. And you, of course, you can have some, but that's not where a lot of your calories should come from, in my view.
Man, thank you so much for dropping these pearls of wisdom, all these practical tips. It's so much value that you're providing. So really appreciate it. And I think the listeners are going to get a lot of value out of it too. And I love how you
Yeah,
just
thanks. It's
simple.
funny because that's just why I think about it.
Yeah.
But I can imagine whenever I was first getting into this, I didn't know any of this, and so it was
Yeah.
like, oh, this makes sense, because like before you think, oh, I'm just gonna get some Rice Krispies and I'm gonna eat some Pop Tarts, and then you eat those and you're up at 700 calories and you barely gotten any protein, and you're wondering like why you're not losing weight. Like you're eating 4,000 calories a day and you're still under on your protein. So like with just some smart swaps and just reading some food labels and understand what it is you're putting in your body, you can make some changes that are actually practical, that are going to move you in line, because it's what it's all about. It's like living in alignment with your goals, because you
Mhm.
have these goals, but how do you make it work? How is it sustainable so that you can keep doing this and eat in a certain way? Because you want to enjoy what you're eating. It shouldn't feel like
Mhm.
a diet per se. It's just like a lifestyle.
Yeah, and as you're talking about it, it's making me realize that the journey that you're on with fitness kind of parallels the Bitcoin journey in terms of figuring out how to align your life with what's true. You've basically figured out how to eat a diet that's in alignment with truth and how humans are supposed to eat. And you've sifted through all these illusions. There's so many fiat illusions with food. And it's a very parallel process with the discovering all the illusions in the financial industry and getting to the in alignment with what's true. And what's true with the financial system is holding Bitcoin. It's the scarcest asset. It's the hardest money ever created. And it's very parallel to what you're talking about with food. You got to the heart of it. You sifted through all the illusions, and this is the core. And it's actually very simple. Once you sift through all the illusions, you get this simple base, and then you can build your life around that. So it was very good to hear you break that down. So thanks again. And I know
You're welcome.
you often talk about sleep a lot, and I think that's super important because that often gets downplayed in how important it is for your health. And you talked a little bit about how you can improve your sleep, but do you have any other go-to strategies for people who struggle with getting good sleep?
Yeah, absolutely. But just to touch back on the food thing, it's like food is costing so much now, right?
Mhm.
I was just watching the video, people were talking about, man, what's going on with this inflation? I know myself, every time I go to the grocery store, I can't get out of there without spending $100. And when you have people that have 3 or 4 kids and these grocery bills are really expensive, but you got to go back to, okay, what are you spending your money on? I look at menu items and stuff, like how much protein am I getting for this meal? So do you really want to be spending, you know, $27 on this plate whenever you're getting like a bunch of pasta and some sauce and a few slivers of chicken? That's probably not a good decision that you want to get, versus getting something else where you have a higher load of some higher quality protein. And if you're buying stuff from the center of the grocery store aisle and this box is $12, this other box is, and like you're just buying a bunch of processed food that are low in protein, it makes you, look at it a little differently. It's like, okay, maybe I don't need to eat this stuff. Maybe I don't need to be feeding this stuff to my kids. I know I used to have, or I have a niece and nephew, and I was talking to my sister about some of this stuff. And like she started homeschooling her kids, and she started feeding her kids in a healthier way, because it was just like I would go up there to stay, and then whenever I would go to the grocery store, like I would go and buy my own food, and they would just see how I shop, what kind of
Mhm.
food that I get whenever I was there. For yeah, I'm still having snacks, but my snacks are like healthy snacks, and they got like plenty of protein in it, and I'm eating nuts and berries and stuff like the prepackaged stuff, and it helped them to see, oh, if I want to be in a way where I'm able to burn fat and build muscle at the same time, stay full without kind of counting my calories, I can eat whole foods, but just not eating as much processed foods that are increasingly more and more expensive. And they're cheapening the products because of the inflation and stuff like that. So they're always doing the shrinkflation. So now instead of a 4 ounce Rice Krispie, now you're getting a 2.5 ounce Rice Krispie, but they're charging you the same amount of money or charging you more. So that's just a point that I want to make about that. But yeah, a sleep it's like a free performance enhancer, right? Because it's going to help you with your hormones, right? Your energy, your cognition, like I talked about before. So one of the most underrated things are sleep. Like whenever I'm doing a like I'm talking to people about seeing if they want to join the program, seeing where they're at, right? Where can we improve your lifestyle? And a sleep is a big limiting factor for a lot of people because they're always on the go, but they're that's the one thing that you don't want to really cut back on. You want to get 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep. So when I say quality sleep, I'm saying you don't want to have a bunch of caffeine in your system and coffee. They drink a cup of coffee, then they can go to bed. But what's happening is you're not getting to the deeper stages of sleep, and that's affecting your recovery. That's affecting you're not getting the benefits of getting to those deeper stages. And it's the same thing that happens whenever you drink alcohol. So you don't want to have alcohol within 3 or 4 hours of bedtime. One, because you're probably going to get up to pee in the middle of the night. But two, it dehydrates you. And people, they don't realize what kind of like the state of dehydration they're in just because they get used to feeling foggy headed and stuff like that. They just get used to it. But if you go pee and your urine is like a darker yellow, you're way dehydrated and your brain literally shrinks at like a certain stage of dehydration. And it's not a lot. Like if your body starts to conserve water and stuff like that, and your urine starts to get a dark yellow, your brain's already shrunk a little bit just because you need that water and not just water too, you need the electrolytes, but you need to flush out those waste products. So that's a big thing, right? Some strategies that I use to stay asleep is you want to have blackout blinds if you can. But even if you don't have blackout blinds, or even if you do, you still want to have sleep mask. A sleep mask is really big. Like sometimes I do an overnight shift and like at the hospital, so I'm sleeping during the day. But if I put that sleep mask on, me like having the slit in the window or something like that. And then if you can invest in some noise canceling headphones, and that's going to help you to actually stay asleep whenever there's construction going on outside, or maybe somebody else walking around the house and their phone's going off, or whatever it is. That way you're not letting these outside or external things affect those 7 to 9 hours. And so it's just having a consistent routine. Another point that I like to make is people can look these up at home. It's called sleep hygiene. It's like a whole suite of things. And one of the things on there is like keeping the room at 65 degrees Fahrenheit so that whenever you do cover up, you don't get too hot and you're actually able to sleep and your body temperature is going to change while you're asleep. And another thing is only use your bed for sleep and sex, right? So you don't want to train your brain to get up and do work. Like you don't want to get up and then be watching TV all day in your bed. You want to get up and be working on your laptop in bed. So your brain's like, all right, we're about to go to sleep. We're going through a routine. Maybe you have some supplements you take before you go to sleep or something like that. There's some supplements that I use if I have trouble. Valerian root, 100 to 200 milligrams of L-theanine, and then you can do 200 to 400 milligrams of magnesium glycinate. So the glycinate is like get some rest. And it's not like you have to do all that stuff all the time, but if for some reason you are just tossing and turning, having those supplements on your bedside, something natural that you can take that's not Ambien or Xanax or something like that. It's not a benzodiazepine that's not going to affect your memory, something like that to kind of help you relax because they're actually going to work on the GABA receptors, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. So those are some key points I have about sleep and recovery.
Yeah, those are some incredible high yield tips. So thanks for sharing those. I know you also talk a little bit about longevity, and there seems to be a lot of fear and hype around labs and biomarkers. So which markers do you find useful, and how do you keep your clients from falling into the fear about using these biomarkers?
Yeah, so you don't want to like obsess over every one of them. Look for trends, not necessarily just like what one test says. Let's okay, if you do get some bad numbers, then let's retest it in a couple of months. The biomarkers that I really look for is the A1C, the fasting glucose, C-reactive protein, and the VO2 max. And with those, you want to look for trends, not necessarily what it's just saying on one reading, But if you get some bad numbers, like if your cholesterol is elevated, your triglycerides are up, and you want to try to have less added sugar in your diet, you want to try to do more exercise, get more sleep, and do more strength training where you're working out major muscle groups or using compound exercises, and make sure you're hitting your step goals. Try to get so there's some the CDC 2018 CDC physical activity guidelines for Americans that states that you want to have 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic exercise or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic exercise. So if you hit those goals, that's your cardio for the week, spread out through the whole week, and then you do 2 days of strength training as a minimum. That most people aren't meeting that, right? But if you do just meet those minimum goals, that will help you to improve those numbers. And then you can retest, so something like the A1C, that's an average of what your blood sugar levels are on average of 3 months. Retesting those in 3 months is something that really good to do. And if you don't have a primary care provider, there's a lot of places that you can do your blood work online where you take a sample and then you send it off. They're very cost effective. And so people can, that's another thing they can not necessarily take self custody, but they can take action on their own and really improve these things. That's something that you can just do, because a lot of times people, they don't want to take medications long term. And that's actually how I got started with doing this, is because people would come to the pharmacy counter and they would say, "Man, I don't want to be on this stuff. I don't want to take this stuff for the rest of my life." And if they were actually seeming to me that they were willing to put in the work, then I would sit there for 10 minutes or stand there for 10 minutes, writing a bunch of stuff down, telling them things to do, and telling them about the guidelines and telling them some of the workouts to do and other websites to look at so they can learn more on their own. And over my course of my career, over the past 10 years, I had people come back after a couple months and they say, "Hey, thank you so much for giving me that information. The doctor took me off of my pre-diabetes medication, my high cholesterol, my high blood sugar, my high blood pressure medications, and I'm not having to take my anxiety medication anymore. And I want to thank you for giving me that education." And then after COVID, I was like, everybody's still working from home and I don't get to do that. And I was like, how can I do that? Like, how can I help more people? And then it's just a click. And so I was thinking about the Bitcoin network, right? Like there's like a value for value podcast. And so it's like, how can I give value to the network? And I was like, oh, I can help people with their health and fitness. I can help people that are in the Bitcoin community and they want to take a long-term mindset, a low time preference mindset. They want to, because Bitcoin is going to be more valuable in 20 years. How do you make sure you got your health set up to where, you can really be sovereign, right? Because sovereignty starts with your health. You don't want to be tied to a dialysis center, but you can travel with your money everywhere. So let's start doing the habits and behaviors that are going to have compounding effects for the next 20 years. So that's what we try to help people with.
Yeah, I love that vision that you have, and I love how you've created what you've created. That's proof of work right there. This incredible business you've created and all the people you've helped. And thank you so much for all this value that you're dropping on this podcast. And if someone listening wants to start today, what's a good 30 to 90-day playbook you'd recommend? Like a simple workout or a protein target or a grocery list to help people get going?
Yeah. So 30 to 90-day framework, something like that. Focus on trying to get in 3 strength training sessions per week. Maybe you can either do 3 full body workout sessions. You could do an upper and a lower, and then you could do one where you work on like mobility and like yoga and stuff like that. So I'm really big on mobility. So that would probably be a good split for myself. I do an upper and a lower, and then I work on skills like my calisthenic skills. So, where it's not necessarily I'm going and working out in the gym per se, but so I have a strength training day where I'm working out my whole upper body. I'm doing a bunch of different stuff. Same thing with my lower body, but then on another day, I'm working on just different skills. And then I'm daily hitting my steps. I hit my steps pretty much every day. I shoot for 10,000, but if you don't hit 10,000, at least go for 8. And that should be just like a good minimum for you, right? Focus on that. Focus on getting the sleep in. And if you can just build some consistency with that, where you're getting 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep every night. If you're go through a period of time when you track everything, right? You want to make sure that you're hitting your target. So if you're somebody that's not obese, you want to aim for 1 gram per pound of body weight. As far as protein, you want to eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And if you are obese, then you would want to shoot for ideal body weight. There's calculators that you can look at online. You can get the ideal or adjusted body weight, and then you can just, have that as your goal. And when you're eating that much protein, that's going to make you feel more satiated. that's going to be a big chunk of your calories because 1 gram of protein has 4 calories. And there's something called the thermic effect of food where it takes about 25% of the calories from protein to actually absorb it. So really you get 3 calories per gram on protein. So that's another thing that kind of goes in your favor. And so you can fill the rest of your calories up with carbs and some fat, but you're going to get with just eating regular stuff. So if you focus on that, like just hitting your protein target, hitting your step goals, and trying to make sure you're getting that 150 minutes of cardio per week, you're doing your at least two, ideally at least three strength training sessions per week. If you can do that for 3 months, you're going to make improvements. You're going to see the difference. You're going to feel the difference. And that's enough time that to really lock in those habits. There's a lot of different workouts that you can do. There's a lot of, and you'll get gains off of pretty much any of them as long as you're training hard enough. As far as like a weight that you want to use a weight that's heavy enough to where you can do like 8 to 10 reps, right? And then you want to use that same weight until you can get 12 to 15 reps. Once you can get 12 to 15 reps off 2 or 3 sets, then you can increase the weight. But try to build up on the sets first, or try to build up on the reps first, because your tendon and your ligaments, they don't get as strong, they don't get as much blood flow as your muscles. So your muscles are going to get stronger than your tendons and your ligaments. So whenever you try to hit, you go from 8 to 15 reps, going from 8 reps on each set. So you do that for 3 sets. If you use that same weight the next week, and then you're able to get 12 on every one of them, and then say 2 or 3 weeks after that, then you increase the weight, that's going to give your ligaments and your tendons enough time to get stronger. And that way you're getting the most out of each weight. And that's like a whole plan there, because you're hitting your steps, you're hitting your food, and then you're just using pretty much any workouts. If you look up full body workout, as long as it's got something like a push, a pull, a hinge, you're working your core, that you're just hitting those fundamental movement patterns. You're working on compound exercises where you're training like multiple muscle groups at the same time. And yeah, so you just keep it's called progressive overload, where you're adding more reps, more sets, decreasing the rest time, or changing the angles. And yeah, that'd be something I would shoot for. Of course, if it was like my client, I'd tell them exactly what it is to do. If somebody just wants to build their own plan, there's a lot of, you can just Google a full body workout, or you could ask ChatGPT for a full body workout. And if you just do something, that's the most important thing. It's just show up and do the work. You can perfect it later. You can get a better plan. You can optimize, but build some muscle first, build some strength, build the discipline, build the habit, and then you can optimize later.
Those are some incredible actionable tips. Thank you so much. And for people who want to learn more or work with you, where's the best place they can find you, and where can they find Proof of Work Fitness?
So Instagram is probably the best place, because I like people to come to my Instagram, because I post stuff on my stories. I show what I'm eating, the exercises I'm doing, what I'm excited about, stuff like that. Like I'm going to be competing in the Bitcoin Fitness Games next month, and that's going to be in Mexico. And so I'm really excited about that. I've got a Bitcoin conference that's going to help me out with some of those tickets, called BitcoinDay.io. And I've participated in that conference. And so it's like a local kind of Bitcoin conference. There's one in DC going on like right now, I think, but there's one in Naples in January. And so I posted that today on my Instagram. So I like to talk about, just whatever I'm excited about. But I'm also on Noster. So I'm on Jay from Proof of Work Fitness on Noster. I'm on YouTube, Proof of Work Fitness. I'm on TikTok, Proof of Work Fitness. I'm also on the health and fitness like section of Stacker News, which is it's like Reddit, but it's basically for Bitcoiners, called Stacker News. And it's really cool because instead of just liking a post, you would zap it, or you hit this lightning bolt, and it gives somebody so many sats, whatever you set it as. So that's really cool, where you get to like things and send somebody, like zap somebody some money, basically some sats, I really like that. So I'm usually always posting on there. So yeah, that's pretty much Proof of Work Fitness on X at JAEPOWF Fitness. So that's the only thing else that's not Proof of Work Fitness. Everywhere else it's Proof of Work Fitness.
Yeah, thank you so much for all the value that you've provided today. And I get so much value from your Instagram page. So definitely encourage people to check him out on Instagram. And Yeah, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Hey, I just want to
Yeah.
say, I really appreciate your page too. Like it's nice to see someone else talking about wellness. Like I thought about, I almost named my stuff. I just couldn't say what I wanted to say. I wanted to say something about like Bitcoin wellness or something wellness, because really it's more than just fitness, right? Like
Hmm.
fitness is just, like I said, it's like the gateway drug, but
Right.
there's 8 dimensions of wellness that I focus on. There's emotional wellness, there's social
Hmm.
wellness, and there's like occupational wellness. You like, what are you doing? Do you feel like you're doing what you're called to do? And if not, then like you need to change some things up so you can work on things that matter to you, where you feel like what you're working on has impact and you feel like you're making a difference in the world, or at least you feel that way, whatever it is that you're passionate about. So I'm really happy to see that you've woken up and you're helping people to do the things that you do. Like you, I love to focus on wellness. I'm glad that you started a podcast, and it's just something I've had on my to-do list that's been working on other things. So it's really cool to see that you're taking action on that. And I really appreciate you inviting me on, and it's been really cool to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate those kind words. And yeah, I'd love to collaborate with you more in the future. So just let me know whenever you want to come back on the pod.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to having some new things to talk about, and hopefully coming in and be able to check out my medal from winning these Bitcoin fitness games.
Yeah, yeah. Good luck with that, man. I think I'm excited to see how things go.
All right. Thanks, man. I appreciate you. Have a
Yeah.
good day, Dr. Satoshi.
Yeah. Take care. Have a good one. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of The Signal. In a world drowning in noise, signal is everything. Most people are overwhelmed, distracted, and deceived, not because they lack intelligence, but because they've lost the ability to discern what truly matters. But signal cuts through the noise. And Bitcoin is pure signal. It doesn't promise, it doesn't lie, it doesn't bend to opinion or propaganda. It just is. And as the world descends into even more chaos, distraction, and distortion, your ability to identify signal, to recognize what's real, true, and timeless, will be one of your greatest assets. So stay sharp, stay sovereign, stay tuned, because here on The Signal, we don't follow trends, we follow truth. I'm Dr. Satoshi, and in a world of noise, we are the signal.